everyone, I'm Shakyra Mabone.
I'm Jack Williams.
Welcome to Reeling It In, a podcast where we take a moment to reel in the best and worst film moments while keeping our commentary 100% real.
And today we're talking about crime and detective fiction and all those movies. And today joining us we have Kendra.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. So let's grab our popcorn and reel it in, guys.
First of all, wait. Before we get into it, did you watch Creed 3? Because you remember the last episode, you
I
said
did say I would
you
watch
made
Creed 3. I did not get around to it.
You did not?
Unfortunately. I'm
okay, that's fine.
Sorry.
You're missing out, but that's fine.
I will eventually. It'll happen, and there'll be an episode sometime in the future where I'll be like, hey, guys, I watched Creed 3.
Yeah.
But until that time,
so then,
we're talking about other things. But
we talk about crimes and mystery. Not exactly. You signed out.
I got signed out of Google Docs. Okay.
Yeah, so we basically just like came up with this idea because I thought it was cool to talk about like mysteries because I just feel like that's an underrated genre in film, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So yeah, like tell me more about this class you're taking.
So yeah, I'm in a class on detective fiction.
We had a conversation about this.
Yeah, we did. I'm in a class on detective fiction. Or it's mostly American detective fiction, crime fiction, all these sorts of things. But kind of a lot of what we've been doing is we kind of went through like the development of the genre, from like Sherlock Holmes and
like the birth of like
Purloined Letter, yeah,
right.
Like very early.
So, like,
actually,
noir films around mystery.
That comes a little later. But actually, I'm totally forgot. We actually started. When we went over this complex history, we started with kind of this one book we read. I forgot what it's called, but we started looking at Robin. It looked at Robin Hood, right?
Oh, right.
And because that was made at a time when people were kind of fed up with aristocracy, right? They wanted heroes that kind of challenge aristocracy. So that's what you got. You got people like Robin Hood, this whole like stealing from the rich, giving to the poor, blah, 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 But then as we kind of transition sort of power structures and we kind of get more of this like bourgeoisie class kind of come into power, they kind of start to change that. Whereas you don't really see the hero criminal anymore. You start seeing these sort of detective figures like Sherlock Holmes,
right.
Where they're not really cops, right? They're not part of the state, but they're also not part of the state. They have
like I guess like PIs, and
they're rich, and that's the real. They have a lot of resources. They have a lot of intelligence. They have all these like traits that sort of you would want this class would kind of want to people to like, to want, So that's kind of where you got that, right? And then as it keeps kind of developing, and I think another important point is that the cops in these stories, like in Sherlock Holmes and not Arthur Conan Doyle, Edgar Allan Poe's kind of early stories, the cops were kind of portrayed as not idiots, but not really capable of solving certain mysteries because they didn't have that. Because people didn't fully trust like police forces back then.
Right.
As kind of time develops, though, when you get into like the 20th century, there becomes like a shift of sort of this kind of rugged detective, that you're supposed to identify, like the working class is sort of supposed to identify more with.
Right.
But they still kind of embody these similar traits, but they're not, it's no longer just about intellect. They're also not afraid to like punch some bad guys,
yeah, I was gonna say
pull out their gun.
Or like the muscle head
exactly,
type figure,
yeah. And that's kind of like where, what you see in like those noir movies. And then it continues, and this is North American, stories obviously, and it kind of continues to develop over the 20th century, kind of going into the 21st century right now, which is what we're going to talk about.
But you mentioned like this is like all the North American characteristics and things like that. Are you like familiar with like international mysteries and like the
weirdly no. I haven't looked much. I know it's a big thing in I think both Japan and Korea. There's a lot of like detective films and whatnot, but I haven't really gotten much into that.
Oh yeah.
This class I'm in kind of focuses on.
Well, this is more of a horror, but it's a mystery too. I think it's called The Ring. Well, everybody know The Ring, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like that. That movie or film is really good. So yeah.
But Kendra, did you mention you were into Sherlock Holmes or?
Yeah, I love Sherlock Holmes. I think he's a really interesting sort of detective character that's not a cop. He's like, he says he's like a consultant, like the only one in the world and all this stuff. And I love not a movie, but I love the BBC series, Sherlock.
Yeah. Is that Robert Downey Jr. or is that...
No, Robert Downey Jr. is the movies.
Okay,
and then Sherlock, the series is like Benedict Cumberbatch.
Benedict Cumberbatch,
yeah.
Do you read Sherlock Holmes, or are you just into the...
I haven't really much lately, but we're actually reading a Sherlock Holmes story in one of my classes right now, my English class.
Which
we're
one?
doing like a little detective crime fiction
Oh,
section
okay.
as well.
Yeah.
So we're reading
Nice.
like one of the Sherlock Holmes stories.
Which one?
It's... Oh, I can't remember the title. Genuinely.
This is one thing I actually didn't know until I kind of got into this class, but apparently they're all told by Watson. I
Yeah,
I didn't know it was like that, which is
mhm.
really interesting to me. It's like told from like the assistant.
Yeah.
It's not like from Sherlock Holmes'
I
point
wonder
of view.
I wonder like why though.
Did you guys talk about that?
A little bit. I think it's really interesting that Watson is the narrator because Holmes is very factual, and he would leave out everything that's
Right.
like the kind of romanticism part of it. I think that's why Watson is the narrator, to make it more humanistic of a story.
Yeah.
I see.
And it almost portrays this kind of like Holmes is on like a different level. You know,
Yeah.
if he was telling the story, you would not get it. You know, you would not be able to follow along. Yeah. But yeah, that's a very interesting story, or a very interesting period of the genre, kind of where like the modern context, you see the detective being born. And then I think another interesting thing is sort of into the 20th century. If you look at sort of South America, Latin American crime fiction, it took very noticeable departs from the North American kind of counterpart, because, you know, obviously South America has a lot of history with, you know, U.S. interventionism, the state kind of, you know, states becoming corrupt. You know, you think of Chile, Argentina, like all these
Right.
bad things that happened there. So you see kind of post that era, you know, sort of mid 20th century, detectives started investigating the state. You know, the villains became more like the state.
Right.
And you see that today too. I mean, we watched one film from, I think it was 2009. It's called The Secret in Their Eyes, and I think it won Best International Feature in 2010. Yeah.
Let me see.
No, it was really good. But you know, it's very much like you see those kinds of all that sort of very real trauma, kind of rooted in, you know, you see it. You see the movies kind of rooted in that very real trauma that they all kind of like went through collectively. But very interesting genre, guys. I'm really interested in this stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway, if you follow the State News Instagram, you should have seen a post in the last week or so.
We asked students like what's their favorite thriller, you know, crime, mystery, and we really got some good feedback. You know,
did, yeah.
Some we watched, some we haven't watched before. We might watch it. I don't know. I might watch some of these things on my, you know, watch list. But one of them was called Prisoners. So
Prisoners.
first off, how do you feel about that movie?
I was mostly a fan of Prisoners. I like Hugh Jackman. Jake Gyllenhaal's a good actor, I think. Paul Dano, you know, great cast. I think the first thing I noticed, and I actually wrote this down, was the opening scene in that movie, where the daughters kind of first go missing.
Yeah.
There's this sort of scene where it builds tension very slowly. You know, you go from like this
yeah, it's most definitely like a slurp.
yeah,
slower.
you go from like this kind of like, oh, like where's the kids? Where'd they go? You know, like, and I think we as an audience kind of we know what happened, and it was very like
panic,
very nerve wracking.
Yeah.
Like they go from this like, oh, like where are they? Like, oh, they're probably down the street, and then like, oh, like
oh,
we can't find
actually, we
them,
cannot find
and then it's like,
them.
oh, we gotta call the cops.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a very great progression.
Oh
but,
yeah, most definitely. Like the emotions that I felt. I don't have children, obviously, but if I had children, I would most definitely be like, "Oh my gosh, I cannot."
No,
like,
as a parent watching
even-
that has to be like
right. That's what I'm saying. Like,
scary.
or not even like you having children. Like, even if you have like little siblings, and you know you being a big sister and watching them, like the brother in that film was supposed to do. Just the thought of like them going missing is just like, oh my gosh. And then you just had all of these, I guess, antagonists. Like, what was the first? Alex, and then who was the other guy? Bob.
Ooh,
It was just like that whole situation was just so nerve wracking because you just want to know, like, okay, who actually did it, you know? But yeah, I really like that slow build up to like to find out who's the actual, you know, perpetrator in the films and things like that.
Yeah.
It really keeps like the, you know, the storyline going. So
Kendra, thoughts?
With the antagonists, I think the actors that they chose for them were like so good at being like creepy and unsettling.
Yeah, no, Paul
that really
Dano is
added to
definitely.
the tension.
I feel like
was
every
crazy.
Paul Dano movie, he's just playing
said-
like some like
he
creepy
said,
guy, you know?
He said, I'm not Alex. I was like,
yeah.
What?
Yeah. He's great at that. I don't know how he does it. And then I forgot the other actor's name.
What is his name? He actually just played in a recent movie called Late Night with the Devil.
Yeah, I think it was his first. I didnn't see it, but I saw, it was like his first like main role. Yeah.
I seen it, and I was, to be honest, I wasn't a big fan of it.
Okay.
We'll talk about that later. But
we can, yeah.
What is his name? But anyway, he was really great in that movie too.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh man, that plot twist in that film was really crazy. But
What, like near the end. Near the end.
Oh no, like his character, like the way he exited out. I don't want to spoil it, but you know.
Yeah, no, so I liked it. I liked Prisoners. One thing I did say, I don't know, it kind of lost me in the third act a little bit. I don't know if you guys had the same experience, but I think once it started getting into like the whole like with the grandma being like, or the older lady being the villain, I was like,
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, to be honest, let me be real. I kind of already had a feeling that it was her the whole time.
Yeah, sure.
But like, I most definitely get what you're saying though, because it's just like that shift. Like, how did we go from this guy who had an RV to his aunt or whatever?
And I get it, and I think there's a balance you kind of have to strike when you tackle topics like this in like a detective genre, is you have to strike this balance between like, hey, we're going to talk about like real traumatic things that happened, you know? And I think it does that very well for like the first like 2/3 of the movie. But then also it's like you have to build a narrative structure, and I think inherently when you have to build a narrative structure, it has to be kind of, you have to have plot twists, you have to keep the audience engaged. So,
exactly.
And I think, like I was talking about, like sort of like the Latin American genre, the Latin American crime fiction genre, you see them kind of grappling with that a lot more because of like the topics they're talking about are so universal, and there's so many people affected by it,
right?
That they it's a lot more like stooped in reality. It's a lot more like I guess like realistic or believable or whatever. And that was kind of my issue. I just felt it got a little too dramatized at the end. It was a little too much of like a we need this to happen for the sake of whatever.
You said dramatized. Why do you feel like the ending was dramatized?
I just felt like, I don't know, it was very like, I don't know how to describe it. Like, it seemed like they were setting up this thing, it's like you were talking about how unsettling Paul Dano's character was, and like the other character, how creepy they were. It was creepy because I think it's like these could be real people, these are very like real kind of people, like you could see these type of people every day, whatever. And then I feel like the who ended up being the real villain at the end, she was kind of like comic book villain, it was kind of like she seemed more like an evil mastermind, like, oh, it was my plan all along,
drop your gun,
right? Yeah, she's like, oh, I knew you were gonna be, so it's
drive off.
Exactly, yeah, and it's like,
okay, now I see what
and
you're
it's like, I think
agree.
it set up something that was kind of more like, it seemed more real at the start, and it's like, okay, this could be like a real story. This could have happened to someone. This could happen. This has happened. That's kind of the vibes I was getting. And then by the end, it was like, okay, like it seemed like they just kind of like needed something to happen. And of course, I love Denny, the director. He's awesome.
Yeah.
I love him. But that was just my only gripe with it. And that might just be because I've been thinking about these things constantly because I'm in the class. But
I like the ending.
Yeah.
Like we was talking about like just now. I just feel like the plot twist was kind of weird. I don't know. I just feel like they could have wrote it better, to be honest.
Sure.
What do you think about that?
I mean, yeah, just like the things it's like.
But like all the way to the ending, it was like another plot twist. Like, well, I don't know. I consider it as a plot twist. I feel so bad because
it was a plot twist. I think it was,
yeah. I don't want to spoil it, but I really like that because when I watched it, and mind you, this was like my only second time watching it, honestly. And I was like younger when I watched it, so I was like, I didn't really get it, but like now I rewatched it, I'm like, oh damn, like that's crazy. Like, I don't know, the realism in that film is just, I could not imagine. So
yeah, exactly, yeah, and that's what I think what got me at the start, because like you talked about like having like I have 2 younger siblings, and it's like that Yeah, like that got me there. But Kendra, I'm curious what you made of.
Yeah, did you guys think that there were too many things like left out at the end? Like,
What do you mean?
I got a sense that like so many things were like implied to have happened or weren't actually shown, and like I still don't understand the mazes.
Like,
was that even explained?
Yeah,
like how that connects.
I didn't really understand that either. I think that was like the main thing, because even with the Bob character, I was like, okay, so like, what's his?
Yeah, how did he know them?
I think it was very heavily either like implied or they might have said it. I don't know. I might have missed it, but
Oh, sorry.
it seemed like it was implied that. I mean, with like the juice and stuff that she had, like Hugh Jackman's character drink at the end, was like that. Like she had kidnapped them and done similar. I think because she talked about